So I wanted to take a moment and talk about the latest Realm update. As most of you are aware, the reconstruction update went live as of September 23rd, or at the time of this video's release, yesterday. While the first phase didn't contain everything teased in the trailer, it did have quite a few substantial effects on the gameplay. I'm not going to be going over everything that came out in this update, but I will be hitting some of the bigger things that actually changed the game for me. The first thing I wanted to note was the aesthetics. Everywhere in the Nexus were these construction-themed items and NPCs. Honestly, it was kind of cool. It felt like the developers were trying to insinuate that Realm is getting a complete rework, but more on that later. What really got to me though was this Wall of Fame thing. Honestly, I never go back here, so I'm not sure how long it's been there, but it looked really awesome. This was my first time seeing it, and it was really cool. In fact, a lot of things look really awesome. The new Pirate Cave, Undead Lair, Abyss of Demons, Snake Pit, and even the Ancient Ruins, they all look amazing, especially the Abyss. My hat's off to the spriters. It takes a lot of work to create good-looking sprites. That being said, I did want to look at some of the more critical changes, such as the Vital Combat, Exaltations, and the serious nerf to the support class, i.e. Priest. Starting out with the Vital Combat, i.e. in combat and out of combat. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, the Vital Combat employs a 50% nerf to your pet, your whiz, and your vitality after receiving a certain amount of damage for a certain amount of time. As someone who has watched dozens of games developed, I felt like pets made a very large and negative impact on the progression of the game, and it took away a lot of the danger that Realm was so famous for at that time. Initially, I was very against the Vital Combat system, but after playing the new update literally all of yesterday, I've actually come to enjoy it quite a bit. It's a nerf to pets for sure, but this makes it much more about what you can dodge than what you can tank. For those struggling to adapt, take some advice from the pros and just dodge. Granted, this system is not perfect and still heavily favors the in-game players, but it should favor the in-game players. One of the things I've noticed that's been put into place to balance the Vital Combat is silencing instead of quieting. A lot of things silence instead of quiet now, and I think it's pretty awesome. I would assume this is primarily to give lower-end players a chance to use their abilities, because if your pet isn't replenishing your mana and your wisdom is half, it's difficult to recoup after getting quieted. After seeing how much thought was put into the Vital Combat system, I decided to stop throwing my rage at it and see it from a different perspective. That being said, I do think this is a nice step in the right direction so that Realm is not quite so pay to win, but there is indeed a lot of work to be done. One of my suggestions is that for petless players, or even perhaps for players who have common or uncommon pets, would be to cut wisdom and vitality by 75 or even 85 instead of 50%. This would give an incentive to have a vitality build and go petless, something that only the bravest do. Speaking of the bravest, let's talk about Exaltations. Exaltations are permanent boosts to stats depending on how many of a certain dungeon you've conquered on that class. On the surface, I really like this concept because it wasn't a huge boost to in-game players, but it was just big enough to make a difference. It gave players that could conquer the in-game dungeons some incentive to do them on all the different classes dozens of times for that slightly better stat boost. But below the surface, I couldn't help but think that RotMG was trying to imitate another very similar game called Revenge of the Fallen. If you've played Realm of the Mad God for long, you've probably heard of Revenge of the Fallen. ROTF did a lot of really ballsy things that made the game a lot of fun. It was similar to RotMG, but it was definitely its own game. One of the things that ROTF did well was the rune system and also a skill tree system. The skill tree made it possible to have ridiculous stats that would specialize a character, thereby incentivizing the possession of multiple of the same class, with different specializations such as the Mana Assassin, the Bulwark Priest, and the DPS Wizard. In my personal opinion, Exaltations are an attempt at something similar to the skill tree, but much more broad spectrum so that no player has an unkillable character. In that respect, I approve of this addition. Personally, I'm really looking forward to where they take this system. Finally, and perhaps most controversially, the Priest Nerf. The Priest is the all-around support class. As more players move to DPS-centered characters, the only two real support classes that remain are the Priest and the Necro. Honestly, I didn't check it out for the Necro, so I'm not sure if it applies to them at all, but the Priest received a killer nerf for their tomes. Each heal is 2.5% less effective per player in the radius, and for a while I think they were talking about having a cooldown and also nerfing the base heal, but I didn't see that implemented while I was playing, so maybe that's supposed to come later? I don't know. The 2.5% decrease heal is something that is difficult to suddenly adapt to, especially in raid groups. It becomes really problematic when you have 4 dedicated healers, but now they only heal 75 instead of 375. With the vital combat and more in-game dungeons coming out with higher damaging outputs, you could quickly end up killing your group by having just one Priest Nexus. The players that I know aren't keen on this, but they are okay with the change as it is. For the most part, the vital combat system is forcing everyone to relearn how to play anyways, so now is the best time to implement a Priest Nerf. But while most players are okay with the 2.5% decrease, absolutely everyone that I know is not okay with the Puri nerf. The Tome of Purification, aka Puri, removes negative status effects on players in the radius of the heal, or at least it used to. I heard rumors recently that Puri only removes the negative status effect from the caster. I recently lost my Puri, so I can't verify this, but this is a very unfortunate change indeed, and perhaps the only one I disagree with in this whole update. And while I could vent all day about how much I don't like the change, I'm instead going to suggest some things that could make it more reasonable. First, re-implement the purification of those in the radius. The priest is meant to be a support class, so let it shine. But instead, you could give it a 4-second cooldown or reduce the radius of the purification. Heck, instead of all that, you could just lower the MP cost to 80 and remove the healing aspect altogether so that it gives players an incentive to switch between tomes during the game for more interactive gameplay. But while there are many things to get used to about the update, I actually enjoyed it while I was playing a lot. I streamed for the majority of it, and I was chatting with some friends when I started talking about my thoughts on Realm. This is the end of my thoughts on the new update, but if you wanted to hear my current thoughts on Realm and the thoughts of several of the people that I pal around with, stick around to find out. I had to edit the audio quite a bit to make it coherent, so the gameplay of course is not going to match up. Anyway, enjoy the following story. There is a lot of controversy surrounding Realm and the new update right now. I've been playing since Wild Shadow, since practically the beginning. I've taken a lot of breaks over the years, but no matter how much time goes past, I think I love this game more for what it's given me than for what it is. Years back, I got into playing after a small hiatus, and I was ecstatic to see how much it changed. But after playing for a while, I went on to Realm Eye and to see if any of my old friends were still playing. I was struck by how few remained. Guildmates that I played with every day. They were last seen years ago. Yeah, a lot of new players have come into the game, but just as many old players have given up, if not more. Yeah, I did that too. I remember hopping onto my guild's old Skype and reading message after message of final farewells. I was heartbroken. I remember when I read it, I just shut my laptop and sat there for an hour. Later I tried to play, but I found no motivation because all I could think about was how I would never see my friends again, and I don't know how to describe it. I played with these people and they'd become close as family, and it was just difficult to play it without them, I guess. I don't know. So here we are about 2 years later trying to get back into the game. That was the only thing I could think about. Okay, me and Post here. I didn't mean to bog anyone down by my sob story, but I wanted to share it because I think it's important in order to understand the community that surrounds Realm. For me, there are basically 2 types of players that are playing right now, the new players and the old players. For a new player, everything is new, everything is exciting, everything is scary and fun, and it's just a newish game to mess around in. For the new players, getting that sick white bag is all they can think about. But for the old players, everything about the game has a sort of nostalgic feel to it. We have a sacred way of doing things that transcends time. That's why we do Best Nut Jeb and Tombs, even though it makes more sense to take care of the healer first. And for many old players, we feel like it's almost our duty to take care of the newbies. Almost like a grandpa watching his grandchild experience things for the first time. You can't help but want to watch them and look after them. These are people that are honestly some of the best people to hang out with, because they genuinely want to see Realm flourish like it did in its prime. They want to have those late night grinds with their friends, talking and hanging out until 4 a.m., only to do it all over again the next day. They want the companionship and the camaraderie that the old Realm had, so they try their utmost to recreate it with the new players like yourself. But ultimately, they find it lacking because Realm is just not the same anymore. The thing about Realm is that it can either be the best game you play or the worst game you play. And what decides it is not the graphics or the content or even the game, but how you go about joining and interacting with the community. Because in the end, an MMO game is only as good as those you play it with, and after all is said and done, games are just that. Games. I wanted to take a moment and share this thought because for old players like myself, players who have been here since Wild Shadow, it's difficult for us to see this game that used to be the only thing that we could think about, that held our family, just change into something that it's not. But that's the key. This game is not what it used to be. This game is never going to be the same as it used to be. And I think that's all for the best. I miss my old friends dearly, but they aren't coming back. The friendships I made over my years of Realm have deeply influenced who I am and how I interact with real-life people. Games may be games, but the people you play them with are real people who can have a huge influence in who you turn out to be. If I had known just how much my online friends would shape who I am now, perhaps I would have asked more questions. Perhaps I would have chosen some differently, and perhaps I would have thanked them for all they did for me. But I didn't think about that as a 13-year-old. I just wanted to play video games. Right now, I'm excited to get back into the game and see what's new. I'm especially excited to see how this reconstruction update changes things. There's a lot of good balancing updates, new content, and other great things, and while for the most part I like what I see in this new update, I also don't like some of the few things, and ultimately I think this rework is going to be for the best. People need to move on from the old Realm and experience this new Realm as a separate game altogether. I like to think of Realm as a child. It started as an infant who didn't really know what it was doing, then it started growing up. The teenage years were right before pets were introduced, but now it's maturing into a real and responsible game. Sure, it has the same name and perhaps some similarities to its infant or teenage years, but ultimately, it's not the same. Right now, I don't really know where Realm is going, and honestly, I don't know what I want out of Realm, but I do know that it played a huge part in shaping who I am today. Realm is a game that will always have a special place in my heart. I don't know how long I'll keep playing or making videos, and I still miss the dear friends I once had, but that's not going to stop me from enjoying what I'm experiencing now. But to reject the past seems unfair to the game, so in memory of the fallen, in memory of the golden years of Realm, and as my own personal way of moving on from the old Realm, I wanted to say thank you. I won't forget you for all that you've given me. So, those are my thoughts on the direction of Realm and what it's shaping up to be. I enjoyed the new update a lot, and I hope you do too. Thank you for listening to my rambling, and until I see you in the field, happy hunting.